Hi everyone, welcome to our channel for this new manhwa. We'll be covering Raise the Beast. Sincerely, the Cinderella story of Blondina, whose life has changed drastically when her dad, the Emperor, picked her up to raise her at the palace with her nasty legitimate siblings. How she adjusts to this new kind of life to discover it. Please like and subscribe, as it helps us a lot to propose more and more content. Are you ready? Let's go. Blondina is a young blonde girl with gray eyes, orphan of a mother with a nameless father. She works at an inn for a cruel man who never hesitates to beat her up whenever he wants. One day he threatens to sell her to a local baron, whose reputation is to torture and kill little girls like her to pay off his gambling debts, so she runs away crying in the street, not wanting to die. So horribly, she falls on the ground, dropping a precious ring she inherited from her late mother before she died. She told her that it was a gift from her father, and that she must keep it safe at all costs, but Blondina cannot take it anymore. She is desperate and needs money urgently to get out of her everyday nightmare. She enters a pawn shop. At first, the owner doesn't want to deal with her. But when he sees the ring, he jumps off his seat asking where she stole it, and comes back with guards to take her. She is taken to a very luxurious place and sits in a corner terrified. Moments later, a man enters the room. He asks about her mother, then declares that he is her father. The emperor, a few days after arriving at the palace, Blondina learns about the imperial etiquette and rules as she wakes up. A servant tells her that she is demanded at a tea party with the emperor when she arrives. He introduces her to her half-siblings Lart and Adelaide. He also coldly reminds her about the fake story they made up, to hide her commoner's origins and explain her absence until now. Officially, she has been frail and was recuperating at another kingdom. After the tea party, Lord catches her in the corridor and starts insulting her. She replies back, humiliating him, which of course angers him while he is heating up. She keeps her cool, not really knowing why he reacts like this. Adelaide intervenes to stop the commotion. She looks down on Blondina, and because the girl just wants to get rid of them, she brushes it off, smiles, and leaves on her way back to her room. She passes by a garden where she hears a meowing. She follows the noise and finds a cute black little kitten. The cute little beast protests in a human language. I'm not a cat, but Blondina is not impressed. She notices his injured leg and connects it to a broken branch nearby. She also spots two other cats hiding and scolds them for bullying their friend. They run away, and the little girl offers to take the kitten with her to the palace. At first he protests, looking down on her, but jumps in her arms when she explains that he might be her first and only friend, since she's really lonely at the palace. If someone knows what it's like to be rejected, it's him. They both head to her room when they meet a servant, and Blondina freezes, choking the cat. He sees her reaction to the servants and increases his presence, making him bow to him. Head on the ground, Blondina is surprised by this reaction. Her cat jumps from her arms and transforms into a cute, dark-skinned human boy. Blondina is utterly impressed by the boy's appearance. Servant recognizes him as the Black Leopard, the cruelest of them all. Since Blondina is not really comfortable with the serving around the boy, shortcuts this encounter by asking what he wants from her. He delivers her the royal bracelet the emperor wanted to give her, and leaves. The young boy turns to Blondina, and she frustrates him because she cluelessly doesn't acknowledge his greatness. He turns back to a cat to be carried as they head again to her room. Once there, he reveals his name. Almond. By the time she finishes healing his leg, night has fallen, so he decides to stay and sleep in her bed. He explains that she is a great exception because usually his kind despises humans, considering them fools and traitors. However, he doesn't think Blondina is like the others. They casually keep on talking, and he warns her not to touch him on the stone he has on his forehead. And from this day on, Almond finds any sort of excuses to visit the princess elsewhere in the palace. The emperor is desperate to find someone with blonde hair, golden eyes, and the power to submit the divine leopards. Unlike his daughter, who may be blonde but has gray eyes, he remembers Blondina's mother, who matched these features but had no power. Despite that, the emperor fell deeply in love with her. He wanted to protect her and their baby at all costs, so he left them to get the power of the throne. A few days later, Blondina and her lady awaiting Lucy discuss how long it's been since the last time they saw Almond. When the cat appears from out of nowhere with a bleeding sparrow in his mouth, Lucy rushes out, not able to endure the poor dead thing. Blondina tries to explain to Almond that usually humans find little sparrows cute only when they are alive. Amin turns to the bird and demands that he gets up where he would be definitely dead. The talking bird suddenly revives and explains to the princess that he stayed still. Because of Almond's sharp teeth, Blondina asks how he can talk, to which the sparrow replies that it's because Almond shared some of his power. Since he has no name, she decides to name him Magento. To his greatest joy, Almond wants to watch an archery contest to analyze humans' weapons, but needs to stay anonymous. Blandina tries to put a beanie on his head to hide his transformation. Stone, highly recognizable, he could totally go there in his human form, but it might become complicated and dangerous later. So he prefers his leopard's form. At the contest, the Emperor enters the scene with Large, and Adelaide only leaving Blondina behind, and announces the beginning of the hunt. After some time, Almond gets bored, so Blondina offers him to go observe the trees instead. She finds one interesting when an arrow whistles just near her ear as she trembles out of fear. An almond out of Raj Lart shows up. Nagging, Almond can't take it and jumps on him. Transforms and presses the prince on the ground under his feet as Lart begs for mercy. Amen doesn't have it and keeps on pressing on his chest and neck, threatening him to death. Blondina intervenes, acknowledges that what Lart did deserves punishment, yet thinks death might be too harsh. Almond threatens Lair one last time and asks the princess if they could go back to the palace together later. Elar complains to Adelaide about what happened, and she surprisingly doesn't have his back. She stands at his actions were reckless and could have caused a lot of damage to their reputation, but she reassures him, saying that she will personally avenge him. Adelaide goes to the Emperor's office, seemingly upset about how the imperial family is not as powerful as they should be because of the divine leopards wandering around as they wish. The Emperor looks at his daughter, considers her to inherit the throne, and tells her about the legend of the golden-eyed, blonde people who descended from Barahan, heir of the first god, and the only one able to defeat those creatures. He encourages her to find them and bring them to the palace so she can become the new empress. Music in Blondina's room. Almond plays with a ball of yarn and Megiddo plays with Almond. The cat jokingly threatens to eat either the princess or Lucy in reprisals for their lack of consideration. Blondina protests, mention that she might not taste good since she only ate junk when she was a kid. Almond inquires about what happened, and if it's related to her fear of big shredded men. She refuses to talk about it, not comfortable to share. For now, later, Blondini gets prepared to attend a party organized by the Emperor when she goes to the ballroom without Almond. She is the target of all rumors around people talk about her dress or her lack of friends. The Emperor arrives, talks to Laura and Adelaide, and encourages them to include their sister and to not leave her alone. Despite none of the kids wanting to hang out with each other, they comply. But when they come to talk with their friends, the two young siblings use a language their elder doesn't understand, only to make fun of her. Adelaide turns to her sister, looks down to her, and offers to join the conversation, to which Blondina replies sassily that even if she had something to brag about, she doesn't like this kind of behavior, and prefers to go get some fresh air, while Adelaide wonders how she could have understood the conversation. Philip, a young marquis, seems really interested in Blondina. The princess goes sitting on a bench thinking about how she doesn't need to understand what the others are saying. To figure out what they are talking about, she impacts a piece of pie and speaks loud about how delicious it is out of nowhere. A wild almond appears and steals the pie. She hugs him tightly, happier to spend time with him than with the other humans the day after Blandine learns how to play chess with Lucy. When the Marquis Philip is announced, the princess is defiant. Not really sure about why he is here, he gives her some presents, tea flowers, and a brooch. He states that his family offers one to each princess of the empire, so Adelaide got one too. He also invites her to his upcoming birthday party, but this whole situation doesn't please Almond, who takes a lot of pleasure from trying to try breaking the gifts and biting Philip's leg. Almond is incredibly angry at the situation. He breaks the tea flower pot and demands explanations about this human's behavior. Since Blondina is not in Philip's mind, she tries to find reasons but doesn't have a clue in the end. She calms the cat down by hugging him, and he asks if she plans to attend the party. She replies that she will think of it since, on one hand, she cannot avoid gathering eternally, but on the other hand, is also sick of being belittled. Due to her lack of imperial knowledge, Almond kindly offers to teach her Old Artesian, the language Adelaide and Lart spoke with their friends so they cannot ridicule her. Anymore, they start their course, and while Blondina wonders how he will be able to write and teach her with his paws, he turns into his human form, leaving her speechless. Blondina tries to protest against this change since she becomes really flustered when he is a human. He notices her change in attitude and plays with it while writing some words in Old Artesian for her to learn. She mentions shyly that she is illiterate, which is not a real issue but might become complicated later. So Amin asks Lucy if she can teach Blondina how to read Standard Atetian. Some days later, Blondina sits by a fountain in the garden. She tries to read words Almond wrote on a note, but how she struggles with one. The Emperor shows up and reads it. He sits next to her and asks if she adjusts properly to the palace. He also mentions how much she looks like her mother and speculates her life after him, which Blondina corrects her mom never loved anyone else in the Emperor. Despite her knowing that he would leave them at some point to fulfill his duty back in her room, Lucy lets her know that Philip sent another invitation since his birthday party is planned. The same day, Londana finally decides to attend, since her Old Artesian got better, and she feels more comfortable facing the crowd. She refuses Almond's offer to come with her in his human form, which triggers him. Blandina tries to be a short Almond on the fact that her going to the party alone has nothing to do with him being a beast. He calms down, and she tricks him with a ball of yarn. When she arrives at the party, she greets Philip, who is accompanied by Adelaide and Lart. They notice the brooch adorning her neck, the exact same Adelaide wears as well. The younger princess gets angry and asks Philip and Old Detesian to never invite her anymore if Blondina is to come. She also insults Blandina and is backed up by Lart, but their sister is not having it anymore and talks the same language. Humiliating her, Lart is surprised about her use of this language and asks how she learned it too, which she reminds him that she is an imperial princess too. Adelaide is furious and leaves the party Lart behind her. Unfortunately for her, one of her carriage's wheels has been destroyed, so she is stuck there while it's being replaced. She screams at a poor lost laird who just tries to comfort her inside. Blandina apologizes to Philip for the commotion. She explains that she's used to dealing with her siblings' nastiness and that she has no need or will to overthrow Adelaide's position in society, and mostly wants to stay humble, but unfortunately her sister doesn't understand. She politely asks the Marquis to not invite her anymore to avoid this issue in the future, and Philip suddenly feels his heart bumping loudly in his chest. In her room, Blondina asks Lucy and Majedo about the relationship between mankind and divine leopards. At first, they are both dumbfounded by her ignorance on the subject, since it's common knowledge, but end up explaining that these two people have been meaninglessly battling for centuries before agreeing on a truce. However, 500 years ago appeared the descendant of Baharan, who had the ability to control all the divine leopards. So he almost had them all exterminated until a black leopard managed to kill him and avenge his dead comrades. After all these deaths, humans and leopards came up with another peace treaty. A servant enters with a beautiful bracelet as a gift for Blondina. The letter mentions that the Marquis Philip leaves to study in another country in his carriage. Philip thinks about the princess drooling when he remembers how confident and direct she is despite her lack of education and bloodline. He plans to come back to her after his studies to marry her, trusting the fact that he is the best catch for her, since nobody would want a princess with such a debatable background. Almond appears when Blondina is trying on the bracelet. His jealousy shows when he asks who sent it, and why it shows even more when he takes it off her wrist and rushes out a week later. A man hasn't shown up, and Blondina worries during the night. She has a horrible nightmare involving slaughters and fights. She's woken up by Almond, who pokes her face with his paws. He gives her a ring. She loves it, but since it feels a bit loose on her finger, she decides to wear it as a necklace. This makes her think about her father who recently paid more attention to her. And her needs. Men gets her out of her thoughts by demanding that she doesn't see the other guy Philip anymore since he can buy presents too, and will protect her no matter what. Blondina is confused by the request, but reassures him by saying that the Marquis won't be visiting anymore since he left for another country and that she will always choose her favorite cat. Lucy enters the room with a pile of branches in her hands. She explains that these are specific plants that cats like. Almond picks one and goes to play with it. Blondina laughs and asks him if he would choose her. Or the branch Almond seems offended and turns into a human to put his head on her knees, affirming that he will always choose his princess a few times later. The whole imperial family gathers to welcome representatives of another kingdom because of a new trade agreement. A snake comes to Adalai, who screams in fear when it goes to Blondina. However, she has no reaction whatsoever, so she is complimented by the emperor for her royal behavior. This angers Adelaide, who seeks for her father's approval as well. After leaving, Blondina thinks about what happened, and how despite her father's efforts, she still doesn't feel like she belongs. Almond shows up and her mood instantly improves as she hugs him tight. A noble from the other kingdom shows up. They discuss the garden when he suddenly approaches his hand close to her. She fears this move at first, but a cute black snake gets out of his handle and slides to hug her. He explains how glad he is to be able to exchange with a pet lover. Almond's jealousy shows up again, and he tries to beat the poor snake another day. Still in the garden, Lart passes by Blondina and Lucy riding his horse. He notices them and gives more attention to the lady in waiting. Large is scolded by the Empress for his behavior at a tea party. Earlier, two of the invitees basically made an indirect attack on Lark for not mastering the basic old Etesian skill. So Lart threw some tea at them after being reprimanded. He walks in the garden angry at how he's been treated by high society. He overhears Lucy trying to convince a servant to not leave her job with Lady Blondina, and he cannot help but relate to his own situation, since people will always try to reach out for their own benefit and stab you in the back once they consider you worthless. He doesn't understand why Lucy stays with Blondina, who has no power nor authority whatsoever during dinner with the imperial family. He keeps on looking at Lucy at night in his bed. He keeps on thinking about Lucy. This kind of desperates him since he needs to be with someone with enough power to secure his access to the throne and not crush on the daughter of a declining noble family. Music, Lucy and Blondina are discussing in the garden about an incoming horseback riding competition. And when the princess mentions that she never rode her lady-in-waiting, brings her to a nearby place where people are practicing layered riding. His horse notices them and blushes. Almond is not impressed and makes some moves to get some compliment, confusing Blondina about his intentions. She thinks that he does all this only to please Lucy. Then they hear someone screaming. Lart has fallen from his horse and is now sitting on the ground. His ankle sprained. Feeling pathetic, the ladies rush to help him. He tries to stand proudly but falls again. He is caught by Lucy, who then asks him to sit so she can perform first aid on his ankle. Lart looks incredibly embarrassed and shy during the whole process. He almost yells at her to leave him alone when he gets up. But she doesn't listen and helps him walk anyway. Later that night, he thinks about her and about his father, teaching him that a good emperor doesn't fall in love. Years later, Lucy and Blondina are all grown up now. Almond, however, still looks like a cute cat. So the princess wonders if he grows up at all yet. When she wants to play with him, he runs away to chase Megiddo. She notices that for quite a long time now, he barely lets her touch him, as if he likes someone else. The next morning, when the sun has not risen already, Lucy enters Blondina's room to wake her up. However, she notices an intruder by her side. When the man turns towards her, she recognizes the gemstone on his forehead. Almond human grown up hot as hell. A few days later, he lays in the grass under his cat form. The great elder Aisha of the Divine Leopard clan joins him to talk about his coming-of-age ritual and his decision about who will be his observer. He lets her know that as the firstborn of the previous head of the clan, he would like to have the humans, Emperor's firstborn Blondina, first because he likes her, and second as a reminder to the humans of who's in charge. She also mentions the ceremonial duel to name the new leader, and enjoying him to not kill his opponent like the previous Black Leopard would have done. Almond almost feels insulted by this statement. A few days later at the Imperial Palace, the Emperor and the Empress discuss the leopard's invitation to the ceremony. She makes a comment about being happy to not have her own children attending, which leads to a death glare from her husband, as Blondina is also his child and needs to be considered as such. Blondina enters the room and is informed by the invitation she accepts to attend the ceremony. Despite the potential risks and leaves elsewhere in the palace, Adelaide is informed about the invitation, and needless to say, she doesn't take it well. After all this time, she is still convinced that her sister wants to upstage her. She demands her servant to keep a close eye on her and to report anything suspicious to Seta Trek-Lundina. And Amen are in her room, sealing some letters to be sent to Lucy. She asks him why he didn't tell her before about the ceremony, and if there is anything she needs to prepare or do in order to not make any mistakes. Almond proudly says that he will manage everything, which reminds her of how commoners propose her marriage. This triggers Almond to a whole new level of embarrassment. She explains it because Lucy and her have reached a marriageable age, and this information seems to interest the leopard a lot. Ina is irritated at his reaction, convinced that the situation excites him only because of Lucy. She moves the subject back to the coming-of-age ritual, asking when it takes place 3 days later as the princess is ready to leave for the forest. The emperor comes to wish her a safe trip. This behavior keeps Blondina confused during the whole carriage ride. When she arrives, she is welcomed by 2 happy young leopards who will also participate in the ritual at night. The ceremony goes on for the 3 creatures facing their observers. Blondina is utterly impressed by everything, even a bit scared since she's the only human among divine creatures once the eldest announced the end of the ritual. Armin goes to Blondina, who falls on her knees. She finally realizes that Almond is for a fact a member of the Divine Leopards clan, and that she is pretty much nothing in comparison. But when Almen gets her out of her mind, she hugs him tightly in front of the whole clan. He takes her to his place for her to sleep, and she discovers at the same time that not only he has a house, but also lives alone without any parent or relative at Almond's house. He offers her to wash up, so she takes her cape off, triggering him into thinking she would totally strip in front of him. She teases him about that, remembering the cute boy he used to be. She realizes at the same time that she hasn't seen him in his human's form for years now, convinced that she wouldn't blink an eye if he stripped before her. In his human form, she leaves to the bathroom. Almond stays behind, all flustered and blushing. Blondina and Almond are now in bed, not sleeping. He thinks again about when she fell on her knees during the ceremony, scared, and asks her who is the man who traumatized her. Before she hesitates at first, but tells him about the time she worked at an inn to survive because she was poor. The innkeeper back then was beating her all the time for whatever reason, so she developed a fear. Almond stares at her right in the eyes and tells her that she needs to go there again, to face this man and realize how weak and powerless he is. She starts crying and he licks her face, wiping her tears, promising her that once she overcomes her fear, he will show her his human face again the day after they both ride Blondina's horse to get back to the human empire. They unfortunately encounter some bandits eager to steal from or rape her. Almond requires Blondina to dismount the horse named Daisy and unleashes it against the men. All of them crash on the ground. Injured, one of them tries to get up, and the princess notices his golden eyes like her mother used to have. Almond and Blondina are now riding to her hometown, and the closer they get, the more anxious she gets. The cat notices the tension and hugs her to cheer her up. He is with her, so everything is going to be just fine. They meet a young man she used to know. He doesn't recognize her, but gladly leads her to the inn once arrived. She nervously enters the place neither. The innkeeper nor his wife seems to recognize her. They even behave lovely to her, offering to show her their best rooms. For her to stay on the stairs, the woman turns around to talk to her when she snaps, and recognizes the little girl who used to work for her instantly. The mood changes, and the innkeeper starts making assumptions about her life. Since she left treating her like trash as he tries to grab her hand, she rejects it and slaps him hard in the face. He raises his fist to her, but she stops him, threatening him with heavy consequences. Her imperial attitude scares the man, so she manages to make him apologize and lead her to her room. Once behind the safety of the door, she falls on the floor. Men congratulates her and thinks about killing the innkeeper. During her stay, Blondina makes the couple work a lot to please her one evening. As she eats, she announces to them that she has a present in memory of everything they did for her when she was a kid. She shows them the deed to the inn, making her the new owner of the place. He orders them to pack their things and leave by the morning. The man pleads with her to spare them as they have nowhere else to go. Those words make her remember her own situation back then. She had nowhere else to go as well, so they took advantage of her. Even at her weakest, she will have no mercy during the night. The innkeeper heads to Blondina's room, a knife in hand, ready to torture and kill, having no clue that someone else more evil patiently waits for him to make a move. Almond glances at him in the dark and grins, as the man shivers in fear. Almond wakes Blondina up for breakfast. She quickly washes up and they go to the common area where they discover that the innkeeper has been attacked and injured during the night. The woman begs Blondina on her knees to not kick them out after what happened, and calls her ungrateful after she refuses the princess's not having it. She reminds her of all the bad treatments they gave her back then, and affirms that they are lucky she doesn't seek revenge. Otherwise, they would have both been dead already. She leaves with Almond happy to have finally been able to close this chapter of her life later. At the Imperial Palace, Laura enthusiastically inquires about the ritual to his sister, and how large the divine beasts really are, as he wonders why she was the one invited when he is the apparent heir to the throne. She makes him realize how dangerous are both his sister and his heritage. The Ember shows up, looks at her closely, and asks if she was well treated in the forest, to which she answers positively. He cannot help but see how much she looks like her mother growing up and pats her head. Adelaide witnesses the whole scene from afar, heavily jealous of the attention Blondina gets from their father. She acknowledges being the one hiring the brigands who attacked her sister in the forest, and is irritated that they didn't do the job properly. It has been a few weeks now that all men left to attend the final battle to determine who will become the new leader of the divine beast before leaving. He told Blondina that he would be absent for an entire month, not concerned at all about the outcome of the ritual. Yet she keeps on worrying as she doesn't want him to get hurt. The day after, she suggests to Lucy that they go together to the forest of the divine beast to pick up some mushrooms and taste some raspberries. Lart, who is passing by, offers to escort them in the forest. The ladies crouch on the ground to observe the mushrooms as Blondina tells Lucy about some species. Lard is unimpressed and takes the opportunity to make some nasty comments about his sister's commoner background, and is shocked when Lucy defends her friend. They get up to leave, and Blondina tells him that he can join them only if he apologizes. Surprisingly, he proceeds, sincerely proving to Blondina how much he cares for Lucy, if he's willing to change his behavior to please her after walking for quite a time. Now Lart starts to worry, and despite Blondina's confidence, she also starts to feel off, and suggests moving back to the palace. However, they get lost. And as Lart feels an incoming danger, he draws his sword and brings the two ladies in his arms to protect them. The two siblings start to argue on who is responsible for this situation, each one taking the blame. Lart for allowing this walk into the forest, and Blondina to suggest it in the first place. However, as she witnesses how protective the prince has become, Blondina realizes that this is the first time she feels him as a brother. A wild, aggressive bear appears from behind the bushes, so Blondina orders Lart and Lucy to head to the left, while she attracts the beast in the opposite direction. Larp protests, but too late, she starts running. Calling Almond a bit further, she falls on the ground. Scared nonetheless, happy that Lart and Lucy could have run away as the bear approaches. She thinks about her cute little cat and closes her eyes. A scratching noise resounds, and she opens her eyes to discover Almond in his adult leopard form. Edina prevents him from killing the bear, stating that it is her fault. If it attacked her, she suddenly remembers Lucy, and Amen gets angry at her, saying that she shouldn't be in the forest currently because the magic is unstable. They go find the two others, and Lart jumps scared. Seeing Almond, Lucy recognizes him and is reassured. Almond acts all sweet and kind to Lucy, bringing up some jealousy in Blondina's heart. Almond escorts them all to the palace. The ladies thank him, and the beast announces to the princess that he will sleep with her tonight. Facing her confusion, he asks if she is afraid of him, and states that no matter what, she cannot be afraid because she belongs to him in her bed. With Almond beside on the floor, Blondina is concerned. She asks him if he likes Lucy, which he answers positively without any form of hesitation, which upsets her because she finally realizes after all these years that if she enjoys his presence so much, it's because she loves him. The day after Lar is schooled by the Emperor during a family tea party for his reckless idea to get lost in the forest of the divine beast the day before, the prince told Blondina that he would indeed take all the blame to himself because she was the one risking her life to save them. The Emperor inquires about the beast that escorted them back, and Blondina explains that she befriended one of them when she went to the coming-of-age ceremony, making the Emperor think about a new plan to improve the relationships with his clan based on an official invitation to the palace Lark, who knows the truth about Almond teases Blondina and inquires about Lucy the Two's behavior upsets. Adelaide Lart mentions the Marquis Philip Rodson, who left a few years ago and finally turned back. Picking Blondina's curiosity back in her room, Megiddo pleads with the princess to never scare him the way he got when she was lost in the forest. She promises, and turns to Lucy, asking her first who she likes most between Almond and Lart, and second, who she would marry between Almond and Lart. The lady-in-waiting answered first Almond, then Lart at the palace's dungeons. Adelaide finds a blonde-haired man with golden eyes in Blondina's room. Megiddo is utterly confused. How can Lucy choose to marry Lar if she still likes Almond? She explains that even if she likes Almond, she doesn't love him. And furthermore, he is a beast and she is a human at night. The princess thinks about the whole situation. Almond appears behind her, brightening her mood. She hugs him tight, but he separates them, way more conscious than her about the fact that they are now two grown-ups. She asks him if he got hurt during his ritual battles and if him saving her the day before impacted it. He announces to her that he is now the leader of the Divine Leopards, so no one can dictate his behavior anymore somewhere in town. Philip Ronson is finally back from his studies abroad and only thinks about meeting with Blondina. A few days later, Laura enters Blondina's room asking her to give Lucy some free time so he can invite her to the opera. She approves, and when the prince offers to the lady-in-waiting, she looks at them a bit jealous of their love. She thinks about Almond and mentions out loud how beasts and humans are not meant to be together. Due to their race difference, Almond, who is right behind her, is triggered by her words. He angrily states that this difference doesn't matter at all to him, and that he didn't work this hard to be rejected like that. Blondina calms him down and goes to lay against him as they hug. Ahmed asks her if she's still afraid of his appearance, which she denies. She admits being concerned at the beginning. But now she is fine, and when she mentions that she can never be afraid of him, he blushes hard and runs away. Suddenly breaking the door 2 weeks later, Blondina plays chess with Magento. She is distracted by Almond, who's been absent since he brusquely left Philip. Rodson is announced at the door and she lets him in. He kneels in greetings and gives her a red rose bouquet. He offers her to catch up after all this time with a walk. But she is concerned about Megiddo not being able to keep his beak shut. So she dismisses the young man. He is surprised by the rejection but complies and leaves. Blondina looks at the bouquet, not fooled by the Marquis's intentions. However, her plans are totally different, as she wants Almond and humans to ally with the divine beast. Speaking of the devil, Almond shyly shows up. She hugs him, relieved that he finally came back. He notices the bouquet and gets started out of jealousy and breaks the vase out of rage. He demands that she never ever let any random people enter her room. He possessively states that she is his and that her room is his territory, so he won't hesitate to rip off any intruder's throat. He calms down and lays beside her, his head on her knees when she asks him why he doesn't turn to his human form anymore. He replies by changing form and takes her in his arms. She goes speechless in front of his inhuman beauty. He lays her on the bed, kisses her hands, arms, cheeks, jaw, yet she is still desperately dense about his intentions. Since he always acts this way in his beast form, however, she cannot deny that she feels good. Almond admits that he didn't show this form prior because he was concerned that she might be scared of him. He hugs her tight, and she stops him saying that it's enough kissing for now. Almond smirks and requires sleeping with her in her bed that night since he is in his human form, which she shyly agrees to. Facing this cute innocence, he decides to let her off the hook. For now, elsewhere in the palace, Adelaide meets the Emperor in his office complaining about how much she misses seeing him. He offers her to go on a trip together after the inaugural ceremony he's organizing for the divine beasts. She not so innocently asks why he stopped looking for the descendant to Barahong. She promises to keep going on with finding this person, which makes him remember that he was the one asking her several years ago. He considers this idea as a backup plan if Blondina fails befriending the beast and gives her a key as she promises to fulfill her duty. Lart is announced and she leaves. The prince inquires about Blondina's mother, but the emperor is not full and knows perfectly that Lard is here. More to talk about Lucy than this woman, he encourages him to work hard to become an emperor. So respected that nobody will ever dare to question his decision, or steal what belongs to him the next day. The hunting tournament takes place held in the Divine Beast's forest. The Emperor announces the beginning of the hunt, and Blondina gets bored figuring that Adelaide will once again receive all the game's offers. Then she notices Philip Rodson on his horse. The ladies are waiting together for the hunters to come back, with their games casually talking about the rest of the event. At some point, one of them mentions a large black leopard wandering around the palace lately, which triggers Blondina. Of course, they are talking about Almond since he's not a kitten anymore. It's harder for him to hide when he sneaks in and out. Laura comes back first from the hunt and lays down a fox in front of Lucy to everyone's utter surprise and confusion. The lady in waiting included Adelaide is not having it, and lectures him about his poor choice of women in reality. She doesn't really care about who he gives his game to, but the fact that he chose Lucy, who was so close to Blondina, upsets her. Liart barely listens to her, and turns back to the hunt, heavily motivated to become more powerful. Other ladies, including Adelaide, receive some game as well. Some are quite big, some are pretty small. As Blondina anticipated, nobody came to her, nobody except one man, Philip Rodson, who bestows her a bear. The Emperor is about to announce Philip as the great winner of the tournament. When Almond shows up in his beast form, he heads directly to Blondina. Looking at no one else, he puts his head onto her lap and declares that he is the game she hunted. He dreamed about this day since she told him that she was not someone worthy of a game during the tournament. Everyone around is shocked by this event, but the Emperor has never been prouder of one of his children and announces her victory. Philip, while everyone congratulates the princess, is humiliated as he feels the anger grow within directed towards the beast. Adelaide shows up to tease him about marrying her after the tournament. Amen and Blondina act all lovey-dovey to each other in the forest. Seeing them, Lart asks Lucy if the two are dating, which the young lady is not quite sure, but supposes well. The prince remembers his past relationship with his sister and her beast, and happily realizes that this new situation between them might actually become useful for his ascension to the throne elsewhere. Annalai's feelings toward her sister haven't changed a bit, and she surely assembles the pieces of her plan to destroy her and her beast. A few days later, Blondina is in her room, chatting with Lucy and Megiddo about the upcoming family trip. She asks the sparrow if he had seen Almond lately, to which he replies that he might be up the springs. She steps into the forest looking for her beast when she encounters Shantae, one of the leopards Almond had to fight after the coming-of-age ceremony. She appeared because she smelled almond scent on the Princess Blondina asked where she can find him, and Shanti answers that it's too dangerous for her to meet him currently since he is out of control. Shantae lets Blondina ride him to go find Almond in the forest, since this is his very first interaction with a human. He is pretty excited. He keeps asking questions to the princess, especially about her relationship with Almond when they arrive. Blondina introduces herself, allowing the beast to use her nickname. However, Amen brutally shows up and disagrees with this statement. Making Shanti leave, Blondina asks him if her presence is a nuisance to him, to which he replies, transforming into his human form, inquiring about the possibility for him to finally apply his imprint on her body, so it would prove to everyone that she is his. He gets closer and closer and closer, and finally, after all this time, he kisses her. He lays her down on the ground. Not parting from her lips, he admits that he is very close to losing control, despite not wanting to hurt her. He ends up hugging her in the field later that night. In her room, she thinks about what happened in the forest. She was so sure Almond liked Lucy that all of this felt unreal to her. She dreams that she walks again in the forest, meeting a beast that looks like Almond. She gives him the ability to talk thanks to her magic, and as she tells him her name, Lucy calls her, waking her up. Laura and her look at the princess quite concerned about her paleness. Since the lady awaiting is so clever, she figured that something might have happened between Blondina and Almond. She encourages her to say more, but Lar interrupts them to talk about his stallion being ready to mate. This conversation makes Blondina realize that if she had a wonderful mating session the day before, it was just because of the mating season. Almond meets Blondina in her room. She tries to explain to him what his touchy-feely behavior towards her means in the human world, and that he should beware. However, he understands that, and to not hold a bad reputation, he has to kiss her. And her, only to his greatest pleasure, she laughs and they keep on teasing each other elsewhere. In the palace, Adelaide angrily remembers the tournament she receives, Philip Rodson, and inquires about his progress on finding the temple of the founding god that will help to retrieve the descendant of Baharn legend. Says that one can use the holy spear and the golden key to enter the god's quarter, so the harp in the temple will resonate to the true descendant. Adelaide mentions that she's already found several blonde-haired, golden-eyed people, and that she only misses the temple. So the prophecy is complete. She will keep on searching until she finally finds this person. Almond, a leopard, discusses with Magetto, a sparrow, about human marriages. Actually, Almond wonders what he must do to marry Blondina. So he can finally spend the night with her. Magetto offers to ask Blondina about this matter, which almost cost him to be eaten by the beast. Almond goes to find Shanti for advice. Shanti tells him how he courted Chala, talking about presents he made to her. And her mother and his boss leaves in the middle of the speech. Without any further explanation, he arrives at the palace in his human form, and asks a servant where he can find the emperor. She's extremely impressed, but managed to indicate the building where the foreign delegation has gathered at the building. He is led by a servant who didn't recognize him to the area where other delegates were waiting to meet the emperor. One of them introduces himself, and Almond casually replies, doing the same. The man tries to give a strong handshake to Almond to show who is the boss around here, and ends up only with a broken hand in the building. The screams of the man reached Large, who was receiving the delegates with his father. He recognizes Almond and warns the emperor that the leader of the divine beast is waiting with mere humans. They both go down to greet him, provoking shock around the people. A divine beast is among them. The three men are now in a private room, facing each other, when Amen finally speaks up to ask what he could offer to please the emperor. Surprised by the request, he answers that he would like peace and stability from the divine beast because none of them knows exactly how to get it. Lart comes up with an idea. The young prince explains that in history, marriages have happened to bring stability to the empire, so that might be a good solution. His father seems doubtful at first, but Almond jumps on the opportunity to agree with the proposal, under the only conditions that Blondina wants to marry him of her own free will without being forced, which means that they must keep it a secret from her. Later, Amen finds Blondina to spend a little time with her. They talk about the coronation day that would happen the day after. So Amin officially becomes the leader of the divine beasts. He states that he doesn't really care about all this fuss, only that the title comes with the possibility that he might do whatever he wants elsewhere. In the palace, Adelaide meets Philip, who apparently has some very good news for her. It seems that the temple is located not far from the imperial palace within the western forest, close to the divine beast's territory, which is why they never went this way before. Philip raises the question of a possible treason from the descendant of Baharan, and offers a solution the day after people in town talk about the coronation, and spread rumors about the new leader of the Divine Leopards. Black, impressive, scary. Everything they can say, the parade starts and the imperial family opens the way, riding their horses under the cheering of the people. The ceremony continues within the palace garden, everyone bowing to each other and Almond breaking the emperor's swords as a sign of their mutual agreement to not attack and keep on with the peace between the two races. When the ceremony is over, Blondina jumps onto Almond to congratulate him, and so does Magetto while they're being friendly with each other. As usual, rumors sped around that the princess and the beast had become closer and closer, and that the big Black Panther has recently paid a visit to the emperor. This perspective excites them as they might see more beasts in the future. Adelaide overhears the conversations and is utterly outraged by all this excitement. Since to her humans should not submit to the beast, she plans to take some actions to remedy this nonsense. Lart interrupts her mentioning how cute their sister and Almond are together. He also notifies her that she is way too obvious in her behavior, and that no matter what her plans are, she may not interfere with his own plan to marry Blondina to Almond. This news shocks Adelaide, who cannot imagine a human. Furthermore, a princess uniting herself to a mere animal. She rushes out of her brother's view and finds Philip. The Marquis is all smiley, bringing the greatest news to her. He has found the temple in the western forest. They are now facing the door of the temple, accompanied by guards and potential candidates to be the descendant of Bahar and Adelaide, uses the golden key to open the door, and they enter the place among the golden-eyed people. The first two failed to make the harp sing, but the last one surprisingly succeeds. The princess is above cloud 9. Finally, she could achieve her dream. She tells Philip to kill the others and goes to the young man to inquire his name. Joseph, the descendant of Baharan's name is Joseph. She offers him a gemstone to swallow unless he wants to die with the others. He's scarily obliged, giving Adelaide full control over him. And so over the divine beast at the palace? Amen? Desperately holds on the Blondina, complaining that she will leave him behind during her family trip to the Zervan Peninsula for the Ice Festival. She insists that he cannot come, giving him false excuses, when in reality she just doesn't want the imperial family or the human aristocracy to witness his heady, touchy-lovey behavior. A few days later at the peninsula, Blondina Lart and Lucy are having some tea together. The princess is getting quite bored of the trip, and Lart worries about Lucy, who has been sick since they left. Two young people enter the room. They introduce themselves as Rubros and Clea de Hiel, a noble family who used to make fun of Blondina when they were kids. They ask about sharing tea with the imperial siblings, and the young man looks down to Lucy, wordlessly demanding her seat. Lucy obliged, bowing to him while he sits, which deeply annoys Lark and Blondina. If the princess is about to unleash hell to Ruberos, the imperial crown prince stands to kindly offer his own seat to the lady-in-waiting, and sarcastically humiliate the young man, stating that he might have a weak condition to steal a lady's seat like that in the divine beast forest Achanthian Hollis place. Both leopards wonder why their leader has spent the last few days around not letting them have the slightest intimate moment. When Shandi suggested he go find his human princess Almond, jumps on the opportunity to use all his authority to order them to find where she is back at the peninsula's resort. The Dahil siblings are debating Clea's opportunity to seduce the prince. If Rubros is really confident about his sister's chances, she on the other hand doubts a lot since she saw him with Lucy, seeing her hopeless. He comes up with a plan to diminish the simple lady-in-waiting so Clea can shine. They both go to find Blondina in the glass house, forcefully accompanied by Lucy Rubros, ask the princess if she would be willing to come to an exhibition they will be giving after the trip. He brags about how his family values supporting artists and asks Lucy if her family does so. Of course, he knew very well that her Reeves family could not afford to support anyone. Clea adds another layer by asking if she knows what kind of art the prince might appreciate. Quoting some artists, both siblings keep on shaming the lady-in-waiting because of her family's decline and lack of nobility, until Blondina cannot take it anymore and coldly asks if they are out of their minds. She calmly, yet with a death stare in her eyes, demands how they can insult her. And her humble origins, Rubros, realizes their mistake and tries to defend themselves, but the princess is not having it. They may not have been talking to her, but they indirectly insulted her. The first daughter of the emperor, the siblings bow to her apologetic, But Blondina takes Lucy with her and leaves, not able to stand such rudeness anymore in the hallway Lucy is about. To cry, she apologizes to the princess for being so useless and such a nobody beside her. Blandina cheers her up, reminding her that not only is she the friend of the first daughter of the emperor, but also the friend of the future emperor and the current leader of the divine beast, and all of them deeply care for her. Lucy feels so grateful for having the chance to be the lady-in-waiting of such a great and generous princess. Rubros and CLIA have joined Adelaide and Philip in her room, ashamed of what happened with Blondina earlier. But the young princess comforts him with her usual smurf and encourages them with her support to teach a lesson to her sister. Considering that no divine beast will be around to have her back in these lands. Philip expresses some concern about her plan, but Adelaide assures him, saying it's just a prank. Nothing serious. The day after, outside in the snow, Blondina is sitting on a sled waiting for the painter to finish portraying her, starts to freeze in the cold when suddenly the dogs become really aggressive. Harshly barking at people, they pull the sled. Blondina is still on it, heading to a frozen sea, which ice is too thin to handle the weight of a sled. Lard orders immediate rescue of his sister, not diminishing the death threat behind him. Adelaide, Philip Riberos, and Clea are utterly alarmed knowing that all of this situation is because of them. But if the Dahill siblings worry about their fate, Adelaide, on the other hand, gloats as she may finally be rid of her annoying sister. Speaking of the sister, she is terrified trying to stop the dogs with the kind of useless support of Magento. She sees the water in front of her and decides that it's much more worth breaking a few bones than drowning. She then jumps out of the sled in the snow. Magedo inquires about her health, and when she tries to stand, she realizes that she didn't stand on the snow, but on the thin ice cracks, and makes her fall into cold water. She sinks. She tries to grab something, yet there's nothing around she could grab. Magedo dives into the water to try to help her. But what can a little sparrow do with a heavy human? She sinks deeper and deeper. She loses the ring. Almond gave her. She thinks about him. Their childhood together, she thinks about him. And he shows up in front of her, a scared expression on his face. At the resort, Lart is pacing, trying to believe that Blondina is still alive somewhere, despite remaining unfound. He orders to prepare a sled for him, and Adelaide shows up, insidiously revealing that she is the mastermind behind their sister's potential death. She figures that she made him yield in front of her, as he always did. But for the first time in their life, Lart rebels and denigrates Adeline's way of thinking and behaving. He stands his will to go find Blondina. Whether Adelaide wants it or not, leaving her dumbfounded, she ragefully breaks a vase, injuring herself in the process in her mind. Blondina has stolen everything from her. Philip enters the room and calms the princess by reminding her that only she is worthy of the throne. It seems to work, because Adelaide composes herself and lets him know that as soon as the stone's power has stabilized, they will act on their plan to take the control of the beast the emperor worries. Sick, he dismisses the servant after they let him know that Blondina is nowhere to be found. He remembers Lily, Blondina's mother, and the year he and she spent together 20 years ago. He met her in his quest to find the descendant of Baharan. However, despite her blonde hair and golden eyes, she had no power whatsoever. Yet it didn't prevent him from falling in love with this joyful woman. He was here when Blondina was born for one entire year. He used to be happy living as a commoner with the woman he loved. But his imperial duty reached him, and Lily let him go, encouraging him to be where he belongs from that day on. And until he met Blondina, his memory kind of faded. So every time he looks at his daughter, he feels incredibly guilty for abandoning them. He tried his best to make his daughter happy at the imperial palace, to make it up to Lily. Somewhere in a house in the forest, near the warmth of a fireplace, Almond shakes his princess to wake her up. It's this dream again. She is dying, bleeding, yet she doesn't feel sad, because she uses her magic to give the beast facing her the strength to wait for her so they meet again. In her next life, Blondina suddenly opens her eyes, not knowing if she's still dreaming or not. Amen. Seems on the verge of crying and brings her closer into his arms. Unable to stop calling her name, Blondina remembers the situation and scolds him for coming to such a dangerous place alone. But Amen is not listening to her. only regretting that he was not able to find her sooner because he was patiently waiting to imprint her. He tells her that he never wanted to experience the fear and despair of losing her when he learned that she was missing, and states that he decided that this will never ever happen again. Blondina is hungry. She waits for Almond to return with food. Moketo calls her outside to show her a beautiful white leopard. Almond shows up in the bag and scolds her for being outside in the cold. He notices the creature and gets immediately upset. This time, it's the princess who lectures him about the need to be nice to any other leopard. Since they are from the same species, he gives up and announces that they will leave very soon due to the emperor and Lard. Searching for her in the area, the emperor questions his decision to bring his daughter into his life, considering that it might have killed her. Someone screams Blondina's name as she appears riding Almond in his beast form. She rushes into Lard's arms, surprised by his tears and how worried he looks. She apologizes for disappearing and teases him about his not-so-royal face. Amen, notices the emperor who stayed back. He turns back into a human to reproach his attitude and consideration towards Blandina, the fact that he always considered her only as part of his bloodline, but never acted like a father until this day. Amen coldly explains to the man how awful Blondina's childhood used to be because he never really cared for her either before or after he took her with him and made her a princess. She only gained trauma and loneliness from these experiences, but somehow succeeds in getting over it. He enjoins him not to act like a father, just in the heat of the moment to avoid opening her old scars. However, as the emperor feels all the regret of his decisions, he also advises him to apologize to her and beg for forgiveness. The thing is, he might never get it, since it only depends on Blondina's will to forgive him thankfully for the emperor. His daughter is the kindest person on earth. He thanks Ahmed for this discussion, to which the beast replies that he was not trying to be kind and proceeds to threaten him for real. The emperor goes to the princess, deciding to finally be the father to her. He apologizes deeply, bowing to her. She's utterly surprised. She's not ready to completely forgive, since it used to be so hard for her in the past. However, she is fine with her life now. They all turn back to the resort where Blondina receives a way warmer. Welcome than she expected, Lucy rushes into her arms crying in relief. The only one who seems upset about this comeback. Adelaide, the youngest princess, hasn't said her last words yet. Philip becomes more and more concerned about her sanity and questions. His allegiance, a guard comes to him to let him know that he called back his soldiers who were secretly searching for Blondina. He sighs in relief as his plan keeps going on as planned. Blondina and Lucy are in the princess's room, relaxing. Seeing how much Lucy was concerned about her safety, and how many other people in her surroundings were hurt, imagining that she might not have made it alive, the princess decides not to let this incident pass. Philip announces to Adelaide that all traces of the responsibility were clean, so as long as the DeHill siblings don't say a word, all of them are safe. Adelaide casually mentions a crazy spark in her eyes that she needs to kill them all, worrying Philip about who she might be talking about. The DeHills or Blondina. A servant enters the room. She lets the princess know that her sister is on her way to meet the noble siblings. She is rewarded with earrings for this report and gives Philip a hysterical smirk. Almond gives Blondina's ring back as he found it in the ocean. He inquires where she's going and if he can come with her, because she will be threatening people. She doesn't want him around, so she uses the endless excuse that he's too big and might frighten people. Ahmed is not having it, and the chapter ends here.